have to do, we have to shift this back a little bit. That way this could square up.
They were the undisputed kings of custom motorcycles for millions of fans. For America, this was the fierce symbol of brutal, unbeatable cool. But that whole image was a complete lie. Massive, secret million-dollar debts lurked behind that famous shiny facade. Paul Sr. was quickly forced to sell his famous New York mansion for a pathetic $1.5 million at auction. A federal judge even found him guilty of contempt for failing to pay $17,000 for work on his classic Corvette. His entire financial life was totally ruined by debts and massive taxes. Meanwhile, his son Mikey Teutul was fighting a dark, secret addiction all alone. The successful show ended abruptly, but the really deep and personal tragedy was truly just beginning. The rise of Orange County choppers did not begin with the motorcycles themselves. It began with a deep, destructive family conflict. Paul Teutul Sr. is far more than just some old mechanic. He stands as a symbol of the tough old school and an uncompromising steel work ethic. However, he also brought his famous, totally uncontrolled temper into the whole family business. The son, Paul Teutul Jr., was always his polar opposite in every way. He was a natural designer, a rare talent who skillfully turned basic metal into genuine pieces of art. They formed a truly perfect, yet dangerously explosive, dangerous duo. The father shouted and constantly dominated the shop floor. The son created brilliant, often brash, daring motorcycle designs. The show on Discovery Channel rocketed them from owning a simple garage in Montgomery, New York, to true global celebrity status. Millions of loyal viewers watched the loud, furious arguments between father and son. These shouting matches became their distinct, notorious calling card. But those fights, which looked like just part of the show's script, were actually deep cracks. They were serious cracks in the foundation of the financial disaster that was surely coming. The sheer scale of their celebrity was staggering and shocking. Orange County choppers quickly became a massive global brand. Their signature custom bikes turned into definitive pop culture icons. They built bikes for huge companies like Microsoft, Cadillac, and Mercedes-Benz. They even built unique customs for the U.S. military and many major celebrities. Their name was now completely synonymous with the classic American dream. This was a family that created a true multi-million-dollar empire from a simple, humble garage. Their ambitious, huge headquarters in New York served as the visual proof of that sudden, colossal success. They were the kings, but every monarchy always hides deep, ugly palace intrigues. Their immense professional glory was only an expensive, temporary decoration. It was the calm before the start of the dirtiest family war. This war showed that fame and extreme wealth had simply placed a ticking time bomb right underneath their own house. For all of America, Paul Sr. and his massive empire represented the perfect facade. It was a potent symbol of the harsh, raw American dream. Success there was achieved through sweat, blood, and constant loud shouting. Paul Sr. looked tough, but viewers believed he was fundamentally fair. His sons looked talented, if sometimes easily provoked. The public truly believed that despite the yelling and throwing chairs, this was a healthy, working family business. Millions watched the show to see them fight hard, then somehow make up while building true masterpieces. This strong facade was totally unbreakable until the real, non-televised nasty court proceedings started dragging out their dirty secrets. The core conflict that ultimately destroyed the empire was never external but instead deeply, utterly personal. The intense friction between father and son, Paul Sr. and Paul Jr., had severely escalated for years. This was a ferocious battle for both total control and the future creative vision. It quickly mutated into an incredibly bitter personal feud. The bitter culmination came violently in 2008, right at the absolute peak of their global fame. Paul Sr., completely unrestrained by his boiling fury, fired his own son directly on camera. This was far more than just a typical firing. It was a vicious public act of cutting off the business's own right arm. It was a very public execution that viewers initially mistook for another typical script twist. But this was absolutely real, and it became the true beginning of the end. Paul Jr.'s firing was simply the prologue to the main devastating battle. Paul Jr. was the owner of a significant 20% share of Orange County choppers. Paul Sr., driven by an insatiable hunger for complete control, forcefully decided to buy out his own son's stake. This is exactly where the true chilling hypocrisy showed its ugly face. The father's very own hired valuation expert declared Paul Jr.'s stake was worth $0. The son, who created the most iconic designs and helped build the entire empire, was told his years of work and 20% equity were absolutely worthless. This was not just a harsh business decision by any measure. It was a cruel financial and personal act of betrayal. Paul Jr. went to court and successfully won his appeal, but the family trust was permanently, irreversibly destroyed. First, there was a private conflict that completely destroyed the entire family unit. Then, following the classic scenario of corporate failure, the intense drama totally left the garage. It quickly became a severe public embarrassment. In 2017, Paul Teutul Sr. was brutally sued by his own business partner, Thomas Derbyshire. Derbyshire filed the lawsuit specifically alleging fraud. Derbyshire had invested a massive $3 million to aggressively launch their new reality show. However, the lawsuit claimed Sr. had simply burnt through all of that money. The charges filed in court painted a detailed picture of absolute chaos and negligence. Paul Sr. once delayed filming for a full week just to go fishing. He secretly stole money from the main budget to pay his son Mikey's salary. He engaged in dirty backroom deals, trading dog food for free gear for his shop. His goal was clearly to cover his own tracks. Every single action he took was hidden. Every single shady deal was strictly outside the law. While Paul Sr. desperately tried to avoid legal responsibility, those who actually turned the wrenches also lost everything. Vinny DiMartino, one of the most beloved master mechanics, eventually quit OCC. He bravely founded his own company, V-Force Customs. But the brutal 2008 financial crisis completely decimated the custom motorcycle market forever. In 2013, Vinny was forced to sell off all his equipment. He quietly shut down his entire shop for good. He traded his initial dream for mere survival. Now he simply repairs local cars and trucks for the nearby residents. The darkest moment arrived in 2019 when Paul Sr. was forced to sell his famous TV-featured New York mansion. It went for a pathetic low $1.5 million at the auction. He had hoped for twice that amount. He even had to sell his tools and his farm animals because every single cent counted critically. But that was not his only deep humiliation. A federal judge found him guilty of contempt of court for failing to pay $17,000 for service work done on his classic Corvette. This added to his massive $151,000 tax debt and an extra $21,300 on credit cards. His total financial life was completely, utterly ruined. In March 2020, he finally packed his bags and quickly left New York. The original shop that made him globally famous was permanently closed. The fame and the easy money were absolutely gone. All that remained was broken trust and piles of fresh lawsuits. Meanwhile, his son Mikey Teutul, who once brought real humor to the chaos, was fighting his own darker battle. He struggled severely with a devastating alcohol addiction. Paul Sr. made a typically brutal decision. He fully threw Mikey out of Orange County choppers entirely. The father did not care about his son's serious illness. He cared only about his failing business. Mikey was forced to enter a rehabilitation center to fully save his life. When he returned, a new humiliation was already waiting for him. A court lawsuit ordered Paul Sr. to pay $258,484 for the unauthorized use of Mikey's personal photos on OCC merchandise. Paul Sr., the man America knew as a tough but honest worker, became a total bankrupt. He stood publicly accused of serious fraud and unforgivable lies. His younger son, Mikey, was brutally forced to fight his addiction alone. He was exiled from the exact business he deeply loved. Paul Jr., the true design genius who created all their masterpiece bikes, was forced to sue his own father. He only wanted to prove his professional work was worth more than $0. The true cost of their immense greatness was ruined trust, betrayed master builders, and a vicious cycle of betrayal. Orange County Choppers shows this hard truth. It does not matter how much the loyal viewer loves your brand. If your business is cruelly built upon lies and deep hypocrisy, the ultimate collapse is totally inevitable. In the end, the show always finishes, the cameras inevitably turn off.